Thank you, Chad and the band. I've been hearing for like 15 years this legend of the man called Chad. And I'm like, okay, could he really be that rockin'? And yeah, he is. It's amazing. Oh, yeah, because I don't need it. That's a good point. That's what I'm talking about right there. It's those leadership decisions. He realizes because I'm wearing this little Madonna gadget here, I don't need that. That's why he's where he is and I'm where I am, right there. Okay, we didn't want to stain your perception last night, but somebody asked me why I didn't mention my family relation. I didn't want you to think less of me, but I'm Wendy Wagnon's older brother, so we're just going to come out with it. There it is. She got all the good genes in the gene pool, and I was left with the scraps. So even though she's younger than me, I don't know how she managed that. But so there, that's out of the way. I hope you guys are feeling perky this morning. Perky, are you? I'm not getting any perky indications from any of you. All right, that's all right. I want to share with you this morning. I noticed a few years ago, and maybe you've noticed the same thing. Some people have, and it's suspicious, some people suspiciously have more stories in their life than other people. Have you noticed that? You run into somebody like, oh yeah, this one time that's the most amazing story I've ever heard. Then you get talking a little further, oh yeah, then another time I was in Norway and blah, blah, blah. Like, no, wait a second. How do you have all these interesting stories in your life? How can this be? I tend to look at the story people with suspicion. I met a guy at camp in Indiana, a guy named Dave Sprinkle, big tall guy with a mohawk, and I get to talking to him, and he was one of those guys. Like, dude, you have too many stories. I was in the Navy, he said. What happened? Well, they showed me out. I don't remember what term he used, but like, what do you mean they showed you out? What does that mean? Did you get a dishonorable discharge or what? No, it wasn't exactly that. He was, so he tells you this big, long, complicated story. He realized, he had caught them in some deception and he was going to blow the whistle on the U.S. Navy. And so they said, tell you what, we'll let you go. You can go home. It won't be dishonorable, but just go. And if you're a military person, there's some official word for that. Here's the exit door, leave, is what that is. Okay, so I'm like, well, that's an interesting story. Then he said, yeah, I used to go to Milligan College. Oh, I know a lot of friends from Milligan College. Yeah, what happened there? Yeah, I got kicked out after the first year. Okay, I'm guessing there's an interesting story here. And there was. I said, why did you get kicked out of Milligan? I asked him. He said, because I accused the dean of students of murder. I'm like, what? Come on. What you accused? And so he proceeds to tell him this story. I'm like, man, that was right on. Yeah, I think you were right on the money, and if some other time you can hear me tell that story. But it was like, so I'm like, okay, wait a second. This guy has too many stories in his life. And I found out, what are you doing for a living now? He and his wife decided they're musicians. They live on Apache Reservation in Arizona, and they teach music to the Apache kids. And they've got so many interesting stories from the Apache Reservation. And then I began to realize there's a reason why some people have more stories than others. There's a certain kind of person who is attracted and who attracts stories. And Jesus is going to talk about that in a moment. But I think if you think about it, it is great. Don't you love when you have a good story to tell? Isn't that exciting? It's like, whoa, I can't wait to tell this. I remember driving home I lived in Pennsylvania, went to college at Johnson University in Tennessee, and at the time it was a 12-hour drive. We passed like 4 or 5 other Bible colleges on the way to get there. But so I remember going through the expanse of Kentucky, and it was pouring down rain, and my brother had just bought a new gadget for his car that you could plug into the cigarette lighter, and it inflated tires. So, and I could tell he was dying to use this thing, so we stopped off. Several of them had to go to the bathroom, so he pulls off on the side of the interstate. There's a cliff. He thinks this is a good spot for the carload, and he goes, hey, by the way, I think my tires are a little low, so I'm going to plug. Oh, I can't believe you want to use your new gadget. So he plugs it in. Meanwhile, girlfriend Jeff and Joy, you're going to stay back here, right? Yeah, they said. We'll watch the car for you while everyone else leaves. Okay, well, make sure you pay attention to the tire because it doesn't overinflate. The rest of us are going to, do what? I said. We're going to do what? I thought we had to go to the bathroom. Yeah, we're going to go up this cliff. I'm like, seriously? You're going to climb a cliff? They have rest areas, No, this is fun. So pouring down rain, him and my friend Dave start climbing up this wet cliff. And I'm like, guys, you're going to get, now I sound like somebody's mom, you guys are going to get hurt. Someone's going to slip. And I'm like, what do I sound like? So they're already 10 feet in the air, so I'm like, fine, I'll climb up the cliff too, if that's the only privacy we have. So I'm climbing up, and I'm about 15 feet in the air, and they're already at the top, laughing at me. And I'm about 15 feet up, and all of a sudden, exactly the thing that I said would happen to them starts happening to me. I'm like, oh no, I start slipping and crumbling. And in situations like this, you're amazed at how much thought you can cram in to a few nanoseconds, okay? Because as I'm slipping, oh, no, crumbling. I realize I have a choice at this point. I can fall on my back, or I can flip around maybe and at least see it coming. And somehow that seemed more of a comfort to me, to at least see the ground coming toward me. I don't really know why, but again, I had a few nanoseconds. So I did some kind of flip around like this, landed on my hands and my face. My hand blocked some of the fall, my face blocked the rest of it. If you wanted an explanation, there it is. So poof, poof, I double hit the hands and the face. At that moment, I stand up and I look, and my hands are bloody and my face is bloody. And at that moment, Jeff and Joy, who were now kissing in the front seat, not paying attention to the tire, all of a sudden the tire overinflates and explodes. So it goes like, fall, kaplump, bloody, and poof. So for one moment of my life, I looked like the coolest man on the planet. Because everyone hears what sounds like a gunshot. Cars are going by us on the interstate, and there's like, whoa, slowing down. What was that sound? And there's a bloody man on the side of the road. I'm standing there like this. After the boom, and Jeff and Joy unlock lips, and look, whoa, and they're looking up at me. And my brother, like, what happened? And for a moment, it looked like I was a victim of a drive-by shooting, and I looked so cool at that moment. I explained, no, I fell off the cliff. What was the bang? The tire overinflated. Way to go, Jeff and Joy. Way to watch that tire. We love things like this because it makes us feel like, whoa. Now, nobody wants to go through things, but everyone wants to have gone through things. You get the connection there? Mark Twain said, he described the classics of literature. Everyone wants to have read the classics. Nobody wants to read them. And I would say the same thing about a story. Everyone wants to have gone through a story. You want that on your resume. You want it to be able to tell people that. But nobody wants to actually go through the rough details, the grimy, gory details of what can actually happen. Two examples of this. There was a guy in Gainesville, Florida, a guy named Stephen Gilmore, 21-year-old, walked into the place and pulled out a BB gun, held up a BB gun, and asked the guy for his money. And the guy behind the counter's like, you're holding a BB gun. Yeah, that's right. Give me all your money. Or what? I'll shoot you with the BB gun. And just to demonstrate, the guy pops him, little, ow, that really hurt. Why would you shoot me with a BB gun? Meanwhile, the guy calls police, like, if that's as bad as it's gonna get, I can put up with a few more BBs. Calls the cops, cops come and arrest Stephen Gilmore, and he finally admits to them back at the station, he says, yeah, I did try to, well, I didn't want to be really dangerous. That's why I was using a BB gun. Well, why were you doing it at all? And he told him, I'm an aspiring rap artist, and I don't really have any street cred. I don't have any good stories, so I thought if I tried to hold up the 7-Eleven with a BB gun, I don't want to do the real thing, BB gun. And I think that's a good metaphor of how we want to do it. Well, I don't want to do real dangerous stuff. I'm just pull out a BB gun. I'm going to do some big-time crime with a BB gun. Or I heard of another guy, Colin Dowse is his name. This guy in British. This guy in British, I just said. There's no country called British. Okay, this man who is British in England. There we go. He invented a product called spray-on mud. Now get this. This is for people who have SUVs, because a lot of times people with SUVs, they like to go mudding out in the woods. People do that, spinning out. And when you come back, you got mud splattered all over your vehicle. But if you don't want to do that, if you don't want to go through all the trouble of going through all that mud and all, you can buy spray-on mud and spray your vehicle so it looks like you went through mud. Sells for like $17 American, and people are buying this. I don't want to go through the mud. I want to look like I went through the mud. Have I made my point sufficiently? We all want to go through. I want to be able to, that's right, man, I went through some stuff. Really, did you? There was not that we need one more example, but I already started it. There was a guy, do you remember Oprah's Book of the Month one a few years ago was called A Million Little Pieces. It was by this author that said drug deals and horrible things and killings on the street and they came to find, he wrote this book called A Million Little Pieces, came to find out none of that had happened to him. He made the whole thing up. It was Basically 3 big pieces. Wasn't a million little pieces. But why did you do this? Because there's something in all of us. I want the bragging rights of saying I went through some stuff. Now, I told you last night, don't panic. We are heading for some scripture. Okay, the fact of the matter is, just like my friend Dave Sprinkle, the fact of the matter is, story people who seem to have way more stories than the rest of us, get out of their comfort zone a whole lot more. They are willing on a regular basis to get out of their comfort zone. The second fact that's way more important to all of us here at the Mississippi Christian Convention, Jesus calls us to get out of our comfort zone on a regular basis. There's a passage from Luke that if you have your Bibles, you can turn there, or you can take the lazy way out and just look at the screen. Sorry. I provide it for you. I really can't insult you for reading it. Did I say Luke? Because I meant Matthew. As Jesus was one of those early guys. As Jesus was walking beside the Sea of Galilee, he saw 2 brothers. I bet this is a familiar passage to you. Simon, called Peter, and his brother Andrew. They were casting a net into the lake, for they were fishermen. All right? Come, follow me, Jesus said, and I will make you fishers of men. At once, are you getting my emphasis? At once, they left their nets and followed him. It's in the middle of a workday. Jesus comes up to these guys and says, follow me. And they look at each other, look at him, look down at their nets. Sure. Boom. Drop nets, and off they walk. Are you guys going to at least put your nets away? Nah. You want to punch out? Get the time card? Nah, we're good. Maybe tell your supervisor you're leaving? Nah, we're good. Now, I wonder to myself how many other people Jesus asked who said, dude, I'm in the middle of a work day. Do you mind? These 2 guys at once left their nets. A couple verses later, going on from there, he saw 2 other brothers, James, the son of Zebedee, and his brother John. They were in a boat with their father Zebedee, preparing their nets, again, in the middle of a workday. Jesus called them. I have no idea what comes next. Well, he did. He called them. Was that all we had? That was that other verse I said we didn't need. Jesus calls them, and same thing. At once, they left their net. Now here, they've got a dad still in the boat. Where are you kids going? Where are you running off to? He guy said, follow me. Immediately. There it is. Immediately, they left their boat and their father, and they followed him. I'm guessing Zebedee wasn't happy about this arrangement. You're going to leave me with all the nets? Not even going to put the nets away? What kind of putzes did I raise? Old Jewish guy. Imitation at no extra cost to you. Okay. So they left the boat. Now, Jesus, what I'm picking up on here is Jesus is looking for a certain type of individual. Again, there were lots of fishermen around the Sea of Galilee. It was the official vocation if you lived around the Sea of Galilee. How many other people did Jesus call who said, well, I can't leave now? But here are 3 guys, or actually 4 guys, 2 sets of brothers that said, okay, the fact that if you are willing to drop what you're doing and get up and go, you are a certain adventurous type people, and that's the kind of person Jesus is looking for. There's a passage in Luke that you're all probably familiar with, actually Matthew and Luke, but Jesus says, come follow me. And one guy, and we don't know, these people aren't named, and that's significant. Why don't we know their names? Because of what they said. You might have known their names. First guy number 1 says, first, let me go and bury my father. Now, does that not sound reasonable? You've got a rotting corpse at home. Can I at least go bury my father? Well, okay, maybe you've had this explained to you. I know it sounds like there's a rotting corpse somewhere. Basically, in the terminology of the Middle East, that means, can I wait until my father dies? And my responsibility is, I'm trying to be a responsible person here, and my contract doesn't really end until as long as my father's alive. So can you wait for that? And Jesus says, yeah, never mind. But wait, that was a pretty good, I thought he made a pretty good request. Can I just wait till my contract? Nah, you're not the type Jesus is looking for. He goes along, Jesus also says to another guy, follow me. And guy number 2, unnamed guy number 2 says, I will follow you, Lord, but first let me go back and say goodbye to my father. Again, that sounds like a reasonable request, doesn't it? Well, yeah, I guess I mean, that seems kind of rude to not tell your family what you're doing. Can I just go back? Now, again, there's a little more meaning to it here. In the custom of the day, when you went back, there was a party involved. There was a huge party involved when you're officially going away to your life business. This guy just wants to go back and have the going away party, which still sounds reasonable, but Jesus is like, nah, never mind. Really? Another guy says, I will follow you, Lord. And Jesus said, no, well, in this case, he says, no one who puts a hand to the plow and looks back is fit for service. Don't look back, just do it. For all of these three guys and the guy that says, I will follow you, Lord, and Jesus said in the Luke passage, foxes have holes and birds of the air have nests, but the Son of Man has nowhere to basically hide is a better translation there. Foxes can always dart into their holes when things get dangerous. Birds can fly to their nests when things get dangerous. The Son of Man has nowhere to hide. Are you ready for that? So we have three unnamed people who we will never know their name because they said, I'm willing to do this. This sounds like a good idea, but Jesus wants people with the go for it attitude. If you want to have great stories, you need to have that go for it attitude and willing to step out of your warm, comfy nest. Now, I will tell you the greatest enemy of this, of the go for it attitude. The greatest enemy is your comfy zone. You know what it is. I know exactly the spot in my house that when I'm out doing things and I'm looking forward to going home, I know the spot I'm looking for. There is a place on our couch. You press this button and the lazy boy thing comes popping out and I can put my feet like this. My dog, my pit bull, comes up and lays his head on my lap and the TV is right there. The flat screen TV is right there. That is the center of the universe for me. Every cell in my body keeps wanting to go back to that spot. I want to go back to that spot, but I have to recognize that that is my greatest enemy. The things that Jesus wants me to do, the exciting stories waiting for me, are somewhere else beside. Nothing exciting ever happens on that seat, but man, do I love that seat, okay? But the exciting stories that Jesus has planned for me is out there waiting for me somewhere else. The greatest enemy to you being a story person, for you having all the stories to tell that Jesus wants you to tell, is being comfortably numb. This might be the first time in the history of the Mississippi Christian Convention where Pink Floyd was quoted from the pulpit, but I'm going to go ahead. Comfortably numb, okay, is what we call it. Now, that's, like I said, that's one phrase you could use. There was a writer that I kind of like, in one of my studies, I read about a guy in the 4th century. You guys were probably just all reading 4th century writers, weren't you? Yeah. A guy named Evagrius. Now, this guy had an interesting story. He grew up, fairly middle class. This was when Christianity was officially the official religion. It was past all the persecution days, but so it was the official religion of the Roman Empire. So Evagrius is a Christian, but he goes to the big city, the huge, one of the big Greek cities, and he lives there, and he's appalled at how badly his Christianity is holding up. He's starting to get, drink more than he should. He's going to parties he shouldn't go. He's starting to get all caught up in the whole urban temptation thing. He eventually falls in love with some married woman, and he's completely infatuated with her, and he's ashamed, but he's got these feelings, and finally he starts realizing his life is in danger because he's been flirting with this married woman. So he quickly, I got to get out of here, which was probably a good decision, but instead he goes way out to the desert and he becomes a monk for the next 15, 20 years. And he lives in this monastery way out in the desert and just does nothing but meditate. He meditates. He also did some meditating in there, and he studied the word and basically didn't have any contact whatsoever with non-Christians. And he realized, well, that's not good either. He later went on to write about this whole thing, and he came up with the 8 temptations that every Christian experiences. And they were actually pretty good. 8. Now, a century later, Gregory the Great knocked off one of them and made them the 7 deadly sins. Okay, that's where they came from. But there were 8 when Evagrius wrote them. One of the ones he covered, he said he used a Greek term for it, but basically it was comfortably numb. He mentioned lust. He mentioned anger. He mentioned greed, all the big all-stars of the sin world. But I was fascinated that he had covered, because of his experience, I was giving in to sin, but then I pulled away and did nothing for 15, 20 years. And he said, this is a sin. It was at my comfortable place. It was my safe place. And that is one of the 8 great temptations that Christians can become: comfortably numb. You never hear about that spoken of directly, but this guy spoke of it, and it got dropped from the list mysteriously. And because I've realized the reason why these 3 guys that Jesus talked to, we never know their name. What? They were comfortable. They were kind of willing. I'm open to this. But you don't have that go-for-it attitude, so we're never going to know who you are. You're some nameless Galilean schmo that we will never know about. But we do know about Peter and Andrew and James and John. Yeah, drop the nets. The calling of Matthew, we didn't even cover that. Matthew is sitting at his tax table. It's tax time in Israel. It was always tax time in Israel. And he's sitting at his table, and Jesus goes up to the tax collector that everyone hated his guts and says, "Come follow me." And Matthew looks at his well-paid job. This wasn't some scrub fisherman. He looks at his well-paid job. Okay. And it tells us in Matthew, immediately he got up from his table and walked away. Are you not even going to tell your people, your underlings who work for you? Nah, they'll figure it out. Really? That's it? That's it. Now, I'm not promoting being irresponsible, but I am saying if you want to go beyond just surviving, if you want to thrive, you've got to be open to when God calls you out of your comfort zone. I had gotten very comfortable. Let me just give you my life story. For 13 years, we were in the Virginia suburbs of Washington, D.C., and incidentally, according to the records, it varies from year to year, but Fairfax County, the richest county in America, is where we live. Now, it was really annoying because we were so not. We were bringing the average down, okay? We were on the other end of the spectrum, which made it all the worse. Everyone just expects that everyone has money, and we didn't. But we lived there, and I had gotten absolutely comfortably numb. I'd raised my kids here. Like I said, it'd been 13 years. I'm like, yeah, and things weren't really, nothing was lighting up in my life, but I was like, yeah, but I'm comfortable. And I remember telling a friend of mine, I feel like the old Indian in Dances with Wolves who says, sometimes at this age, I just like a warm fire. Yeah, you're telling me about all these dangers out there, but I just like a warm fire. And I'd gotten to that place. And God will stir up the nest when you get to that place. You won't like it. I promise you, you will not like it. But I'm here to tell you, after wrestling with God for 40 years or so, there's lots of things God will do that will be good for you that you will not like. So expect that. Expect that there will be things you don't. I didn't like having the nest stirred. But my wife and I had been convicted. We had friends who were doing inner city ministry in Cincinnati who were saying, why don't you come join us? And I did the lazy man. Can I first go and finish what I'm doing here? I said to Jesus. He's like, right, I'll get back to you. What I've noticed is there is a discomfort you feel whenever you know, I have a feeling I should do that. We talked about the nudge last night. You get the nudge. I'll tell you this morning, the second thing that happens to you is you get this feeling of kind of a squeamish feeling. I have a feeling I should go talk to that person. So I have now identified that feeling. I know when it hits me when I go, whatever I am conveying to you right now, I am actually an introvert by nature. My wife is very much social, and I'm just like, can I just not? I've got that seat back home, and there's an NFL game on, and the dog's waiting for me. Can I go back to that? And I know that feeling, but when I've learned to identify, when you get that feeling of squeamish, here's what you do. If you want a good story, you trample it. You start walking. Okay, I'm doing it. Sometimes I'll just I know that feeling. It's coming over me. It's out of my comfort zone. Just trample it. Just walk past it. I promise you, there will always be a good story on the other side of that squeamish feeling. So we moved to Cincinnati. We moved to one of the rough neighborhoods of Cincinnati. Interestingly, I live in the biggest house I've ever lived in my life. But we're getting to know the neighbors. This neighbor's over here, husband or boyfriend and girlfriend living together, and they were great. And a good friend of mine lived across the street. And these neighbors on to our right, we couldn't quite figure them out. Like, people kept coming and going. There was some really loud, verbally abusive guy that he was insulting everyone in the house. You could hear him for blocks away. That's all we knew. Then he kind of disappeared. And then some other guy showed up, and there were ladies that were coming and going. We can't really figure out what's going on this house next to us. And then December of 2013, a few months after we'd moved, we figured out what had been going on there. It was actually a heroin salesman lived next door to us. That's why the guy kept coming and going. And the girls that were coming and going kind of worked for him, if you know what I'm saying, and they supported their habit by hooking. And so these girls come over to me. We couldn't get a conversation going. My wife is visiting her family in Louisville at the time. Like, why, oh, why did you pick this time? The girls, I'm banging on the door. Yeah. And suddenly, the girls who we couldn't get a conversation going with, the ladies, the women, are at the front door like, hey, listen, can I plug my phone in real quick? My phone's dead. And they shut our power off and everything because the pimp left, basically, okay? And so they shut our power off, and I'm like, wow. So I start to scan all my Bible college classes. What does one do in this situation? So I'm like, I got. Now my daughter was there. My 18-year-old daughter was there, so that took a little bit of the awkwardness away from it. So they plug my phones in. Now they figure, oh, good, we got good power. And it's freezing, and they're freezing cold. I'm like, ah. So I figured maybe if I plug an extension cord from my porch and feed it through your window, yeah, that's great. Then we can plug the TV in, and off they scampered. I would think heat would be the greater concern, but no, they were way more excited about the TV getting plugged in. And it was like, okay, what do? That later on, the next day, they come by. Do you have any food we can eat? Sandwiches? So I'm sitting in the living room with 2 heroin prostitutes and my daughter. And I'm thinking, this is so awkward and uncomfortable. But it's a good story, isn't it? We came to find out the guy, the abusive loudmouth, we weren't going to see him for a while. For about 15 to 20, we weren't going to see him. And the girls ended up moving away shortly after the holidays were over. But I realized then, it's like everything in me said, no, do not do this. I was told later, I'm not allowed to plug in an extension cord and feed it into the house next door either. That's also, there's something wrong with that. But God was starting to teach me then, if you want good stories, and it doesn't really matter whether you want the good stories. What really matters is Jesus wants exciting stories for you. What will keep you from those stories is this. Discomfort. Okay, I'm just now looking at that. Does that say 9:11? 11 minutes past 9? What? 9:41. There we go. Okay, got it. I thought it said, okay, never mind. Good. Keeping track with the time. So we're going to share my wife and I will be sharing in workshop. We'll tell you some of the stories. She's got a whole lot of stories. She had to swallow her discomfort and start working at what we call our Block Ministries is the organization I belong to. The Weightless Anchor is the women's refuge in the epicenter of crime and heroin and prostitution in Cincinnati. We own several buildings down there. And I tell little kids stories across the street. My wife works over in the Weightless Anchor. Yeah, the Weightless Anchor. Day shelter. Okay, that's the official word. Okay, let me dumb it down for you. Heroin prostitutes. Okay, show up there. Not just, but lots and lots of great stories come from that. Or we could be back in Virginia with nothing to tell you. And this is the choice you have. Now, you don't have to move to some inner city. I was swapping stories with Jackson. Where'd you go? The guy in downtown Jackson. There you are. You're hiding over there. Okay. He's got some great stories too. He shared some of them with last night. Now, you don't have to do that, okay? Sometimes it's as simple as just looking around, doing what Jesus said, watch and pray. Watch and pray to the disciples. Just watch for opportunities and pray. Because what's a maybe greater need in your neighborhood is not you driving to some downtown urban area. There might be some lonely single mother that lives at the end of your block. And you're like, I wonder if anyone talks to her. I could go down and start up a conversation, but and then comes the squeamish. Trample that squeamish to death. And great stories will await you. A good friend of mine, we knew each other since high school, and we both went to college together. He didn't tell me this till later, but he was in his third year of Bible college studying for the ministry, and he had just had it. It was like one test too many, one all-night session trying to read a book and then write a report on it for the next day, and just feeling discouraged, feeling like, oh, what am I doing here? This is ridiculous. He had mechanical skills. He's like, I'm going to go back home and just be a mechanic. And he made that decision. I'm going to do it. That's what I'm doing. I'm dropping out. I'm going back, and I'm going to be a mechanic. So we went down Chapman Highway. There was a hot dog place. You get 3 hot dogs for $1 in Knoxville, Tennessee, back then. And so he's like, that's what I'm going to do. I've made my decision. I feel good about this. I'm going to go back home, and I'm going to go down, and now I'm going to celebrate with 3 hot dogs for $1. So he drove down to Chapman Highway and went, what was that place called? I can't remember now. Anyway, so he's on his second hot dog, sitting in his car. Or no, he's leaning against the hood of his car, eating his second hot dog. And a car pulls up, and a window goes down. And a man he'd never seen before pulls up. He's like, hey, listen. He's like, do I know you? No, you don't. He said, but I'm a Christian, and I saw you standing there, and I got to tell you, I don't know why, but God wants me to tell you something. Okay? And he wants me to tell you, don't give up. So there you have it. I don't know I hope that means something to you. All I know is I was driving past, and the Lord told me that on no uncertain terms. So God bless you. And off he drives. And my friend Greg realized how eerie that was and how supernatural that was. And it's 2016. He's now in his 30-something year of ministry, preaching at a church in Pennsylvania. He kept going because some guy did something very uncomfortable and realized, I'm not going to walk up to a total stranger and tell him this goofy thing. Got lots of stories like that of people that dare to do it. You don't have to stick around. That man will never know probably that he had such an impact on a life. But when my friend was about to give up, this man gave him the message from the Lord. He got past that squeamish of, this is what's on you. And he had a great story to tell. So I'll leave that with you. You can just keep on surviving. But if you want to thrive, get past that squeamish. Stop your addiction to comfortably numb and decide, I want all the stories that God has for me in my life by overcoming that squeamish. Let's pray. Have you heard of this? In which case, real guys get together, not like professional wrestling. These are real people, and you can use any method you want. You're going to get in the ring with this guy, and you're going to pound at each other until somebody taps out, and that's it. And this is real stuff. There's like one rule. Everything else, no, hit anything you want with anything you want. Go at it, open, no weapons, but you go at it. So I thought, well, this isn't a competition. The karate guys are going to go. No, this guy's a boxer. Boxer? He's not going to stand at you. Oh, but this guy's a wrestler. Like the wrestler is going to last 10 seconds against karate guy. And I began to wait. Okay, here, I want to watch some of this because there's going to be amazing karate moves. And what I discovered, there were no amazing karate moves. If you've ever seen real guys actually really fighting, you never, hardly ever, now and then you see a kick, and that's it. You hardly ever see a spin kick where the guy comes all the way around because these are trained professionals, and they can see, oh, your body's turning around? Watch this. I'm either going to step out of the way or I'm going to duck, and you can't hit me because I'm that good. And it's like, wow. And it's like mostly wrestling. It's like guys jamming each other on the ground until you've twisted the guy in some impossible position and he cries out in pain and taps the floor. It's like, where's all the karate moves? But I thought those were the moves. Those were the guarantees. You could beat anyone with those moves. And I found out when you see real people fighting, those karate moves are a whole lot of Hollywood stuff. It's a whole lot of glamour and glitz, a whole lot of special effects going on there. What? They don't really work. Now, don't panic, because here's where we're closing in. So I'm reading the Bible. Told you I'd get there. And I had the reason I tell you about my karate revelation is because I had the same revelation in Scripture. I'm reading the Old Testament, and I'm reading about these amazing miracles. Elijah calls down fire from heaven. What? And this water just parts, and they walk through. And I have gotten what a lot of Christians, have you gotten this? Miracle envy. I call it. You're reading through the Bible and you get miracle envy. How come we can't do that? What's the matter, God? What's the deal? Why can't I do one of these cool things? I'm not asking for a lot, just one. You gave Moses 10 of these great plagues. Can I have one? Can I have the plague of bugs? I think I could get the gospel point across. There's a lady at the end of our street that is annoying to everyone. If I called down bees on her and said, in the name of the Lord, people would be dazzled with you, God. I want one of these moves. Come on. I couldn't part water. Would it kill you just water my tub? I'm not asking for a body of water. I'll invite the neighborhood kids over and I'll part the water in the tub and they'll turn to you. God, come on. Why can't I use it? And I saw all these great moves of God, like the 10 plagues of Egypt and parting of the Red Sea, and 3 million Israelis walked through that. Like, wow. I read about Balaam's sword. You know, Balaam, who's called to call curses down on Israel. Instead, he has his animal. I won't say the animal's name so nobody will giggle. But his animal turns around, his beast of burden, the donkey that he's riding, there we go, turns around and talks to him like, well, you got to be kidding me. But that's not all to that story. After the donkey talks to him, he looks up in the path and there says there's an angel with a flaming sword. Now, I didn't really care if my pets talked to me or not, but I wanted one of those flaming swords. Like, you got to be kidding me. Who would turn down a message? I have a message from the Lord, and you got a flaming sword. We want to hear what you have to say. That's right. Like, God, come on, a flaming sword. Is that too much to ask? Miracle envy. Now, truth be told, if you had a flaming sword and you stabbed somebody with it, it would actually cauterize the wound on the way in, and it would probably be less likely to cause injury. Okay, I'm overthinking it. Anyway, so all these things, Jesus comes along, and then there's like this brief period, 300 years of no miracles. Then Jesus comes on the scene. Wow, now the Son of God, the God-man here, he's whipping out miracles left and right, and all kinds of things are happening. He's raising Lazarus from the dead, and he's, all sorts of things are happening. And I thought, God, why? You seem to really enjoy that. You use these moves. Why can't we do this kind of stuff? Why can't I have one of these flashy miracles? And what I found out, same as I figured out about the karate thing, these moves look impressive. They don't actually do the trick. Now I'm going to lay something on you here this morning. Get ready. Put on your safety helmets because your minds are about to be blown. Okay, and here it is. Miracles never really worked very well. There was a reason. It got people's attention, got people listening. It did do that. But as much as you think everyone will come to Jesus, everyone will come to God because of the miracles, follow up on that. Pharaoh sees 10 plagues, bugs and lice and boils and darkness that you can feel and the birth of it. And that's why Pharaoh turned to God. Wait, oops. Pharaoh didn't turn to God. Egypt didn't turn to God. Well, how in the world? Well, the people of Israel, they walked through the Red Sea parts and they walked through 2 walls of water. Whoa, this is amazing. And that's why they stayed faithful to God, right? Wrong. A few months later, the people of Israel are chipping in their gold earrings to make a golden calf. You have got to be kidding me. Did you not see the Red Sea part? Yeah, but we want a golden calf. Like, what is the matter here? Here's what's the matter. Those miracles don't really work very well, do they? Balaam has a donkey talk to him, and the angel with the flaming sword. And Balaam became a faithful follower of God. No, he didn't. What in the world? Yeah, they're kind of overrated, aren't they, those miracles? We read about these moves of God, and we think, oh, if I could do that, oh, that'd be so amazing. I mean, you'd think, okay, Jesus is about to pull a guy out of the grave. He's been dead. Lazarus has been dead for 3 days. He is starting to decompose. He is stinking. And Jesus comes up, Lazarus, come forth. And the stone rolls away. And Lazarus comes out, and that's why all of Israel turned to follow Jesus. What? They didn't? No. About 5 days later, that's how long it lasted. 5 days later, they're yelling for Pilate to crucify him. Head scratcher, isn't it? How can you look at miracles like that? How can you look at these amazing moves of God and not be like, turn to him? And here's the reason. That's not God's favorite move. You want to know what God's favorite move is? I don't want to call it God's secret move. It's hardly a secret. But what really works more than any of this stuff, as impressive as these miracles are, what really works is found not secretly, found in many places, but Romans 2, I think, says it best. This passage from Romans 2. He's kind of scolding the Romans. He's mid-scold here, and he says, do you show contempt for the riches of his kindness, tolerance, and patience, not realizing that God's kindness leads you toward repentance? I thought a guy walking on water would lead you to repentance. Yeah, I can see where you'd think that. Not true. I would think that seeing fire come down from heaven would lead someone to repentance. Again, I understand why you would think that. It seems like it would. It doesn't. Ahab and, I want to say Delilah, that can't possibly be right. Ahab and Jezebel, the king and queen in Israel at that time, watched fire come down from heaven and consume the altar of the prophets of Baal. Did they turn to God? No. So what does work? God's kindness is what leads people to repentance. What is the move you want to learn that you can actually change people's lives with? It's be the purveyor and the conveyor of God's kindness. Interesting. Now, God's kindness in general is how you're going to win people over. Specifically, I will tell you, though, what is really dramatic, if you can time that kindness to come in right when somebody feels the absolute worst about themselves. Timing is everything. And for that, I'm going to go to Luke to tell you this is my favorite story of the timing of God's kindness. Peter. We're going to jump in here with Peter. Did Peter witness any miracles? Oh, yeah. He witnessed all of them. Peter got to see more than just about everyone else. Peter got to see Jesus walking on the water and said, Lord, bring me out to you. And then Peter actually got to, can you believe this? Walk on water until he lost faith. Got to walk on water. Peter got to be on Mount Transfiguration where Moses and Elijah suddenly appear. Wow. And of course, he ruins the moment by shooting off his big mouth and says the wrong thing and it all disappears. But there's Moses and Elijah. Peter has seen some stuff. Has Peter changed yet? Not really. You know what changed Peter? We're about to see. They seize Jesus. They take him away. They lead him and they take him to the house of the high priest. Now, you got to know the setup of houses in Israel at this time. In this particular house, if you were wealthy, you had a courtyard. And then there was like a second floor that you could kind of see up into because they didn't have air conditioning, so you had big open windows. And so people were down in the courtyard warming themselves, as we're about to read here. Peter follows at a distance. There's a whole sermon there, but not for now. When they had kindled a fire in the middle of the courtyard, sat down together, Peter sat down with them. But he can see up on that second floor and can't hear what's going on, not close enough for that, but he can see these Jewish leaders. And Jesus just sitting there, looking up at them, listening, and sometimes hitting them. And just like yelling, all of them raging and ripping their clothes, and Jesus just sitting there. And Peter's like watching with great concern. A servant girl sees him sitting there in the firelight. She looks closely at him and says, hey, this man was with him. And Peter, no, what? No, woman, I don't know him, he said. Continues to warm his fire. The trial continues. A little later, someone else saw him and said, you also are one of them. Man, I am not. Gee, Peter replied. About an hour later, another asserted. Now, you're going to love this here in Mississippi because of his northern accent. From Galilee, strong northern accent in Jesus' day. He says, certainly this fellow was with him, for he's a Galilean. And Peter replied, man, I don't know what you're talking about. In fact, one of the other Gospels inserts that he puts in a curse there. And they're all like, whoa, he's a cusser. So for a few seconds around the fire, they're all thinking, oh, this guy's cool. And then at that moment, the rooster crowed. You talk about timing. That's what Jesus said at the Last Supper. Before the rooster crows twice, you will deny me 3 times. No way, I would never do that. Yeah. He hears the rooster and he suddenly realizes, and he looks up at Jesus, and here is the moment that Peter is transformed. The Lord turns and looks straight at Peter. Now, when I heard this story growing up, I wondered for the longest time what that look was. You know, you've seen some looks from people, haven't you? What do you suppose that look looked like? Now, if it was anyone else but Jesus, I can guess. If it was me, if I'm on trial for my life and my best friend, supposedly, is down warming himself at the fire and for the third time tells her, well, I don't know who he is. I got to look for him. Okay, it's like, really? I'm looking down, it's like, nice one, or, you know, maybe shake, yeah, later, pal, I'll deal with you, or who knows what. You would all kinds of things would naturally come to you. I don't think that could possibly have been Jesus' look because of the impact it made. It says Jesus looked straight at Peter. I think this was the absolute most loving look Peter had ever seen in his life. After he gets done, see, yeah, I'm going to whip out the big bombs. See, I'm pretty cool. And then all of a sudden, rooster crows, and suddenly, and I think Jesus just looked at him like, that almost looks sarcastic. Maybe, I don't know, maybe Jesus blew him a kiss, or maybe Jesus possibly mouthed in Hebrew, I don't know. I think it was the absolute most loving look that Peter ever saw. At the time when you least deserve it, God bestows his kindness on you, and it is incomprehensible. You can't possibly love me now. That is what will jack you up. That is what will truly turn your life upside down. That is what will revolutionize you when you feel God's love at the time when you feel like you least deserve it. How could you possibly be loving me now? This doesn't make any sense. C.S. Lewis called that intolerable love. No, you can't be loving me now. And yet Jesus conveyed to him, I love you. And the rooster crows. And Peter remembers the words, before the rooster crows today, you will disown me 3 times. And then he went outside and wept bitterly. I don't know if Peter would exactly point this, but I think this would qualify. Peter, what was the most life-changing event in your, you've seen so many things. I think he would say, this was the day I finally got it. The fact that he could still love me at that moment. That's God's favorite move. God's favorite move, open arms. Come on. Especially when it's administered to someone who feels like they do not deserve it. I mean, if someone feels like they deserve God's kindness, that's a different kind of sadness. You feel like you deserve it. It's not going to have the same impact. But when you realize I don't deserve it and God's still giving you, I can give you lots of examples from my life. I'm scanning the audience to see if any relatives of mine are here, and I don't see any except for Johnny. Okay, he's safe. Because I've gotten a lot more sparingly about what kind of stories I've told from my past. But I ran from God for about 2 years when I was in high school, and it was a horrible time. And I every day woke up thinking, and I don't think this was even accurate, but I thought if I died today, I would definitely go to hell. But I love what I'm doing. And I love it more than I love the Lord. So I continued on, and there were so many times when God did this to me. I was expecting anger. And instead of anger, God would bail me out of something. I remember one time I was with a group of friends. This was back in the last days of the hippie era. So I was with some hippie friends, and people's minds weren't completely there at this moment. Anyway, and so my friends, we're looking up at this cloud. We're all like, whoa, look at that cloud, stoners, whoa. And my friend, who had never had a religious thought in her life, said, it looks like some kind of cloud like Jesus could come bursting through. I'm like, oh, come on, why? Why would she say this to me? I don't want to think about Jesus right now. I'm running from him. I remember another time I begged my mother if I could go to a concert on Wednesday night when we had Bible study. Please, Mom, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opera. I don't remember. Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young, I think, was playing in Pittsburgh. Please, please, please. So we all guessed. My mother reluctantly gave me permission. And so, so I'm off with my friends. And we started early. Before we even left the parking lot, we were mixing and matching various chemicals. And we're on our way. Well, we have to pass, in order to get to the concert venue, we have to pass by my church, which was up on a hill overlooking a highway. And when it starts to get dark, it was just woods that led up to that. And then you see this, if there's activity going on at the church, if there's lights on, you don't see the dark hillway. All you see is this church that looks like it's floating up to heaven. That's what it would look like from the highway. And so we're passing by, and one of my stoner friends looks and goes, whoa, look at that church up there, the one I'm supposed to be at. It looks like it's floating up to heaven. I'm like, oh, come on, really? Like, why, God, why? Can't you just, how could I, come on, you got to hate me by now. I'm sure you hate me. Why are you still doing this? I remember one time riding my bike somewhere to do evil. We'll just leave it at that. And I passed this empty vacant lot, and there was a huge, giant truck. I mean, seriously, like half the size of this room, it looked like. I've never seen a truck this huge. And plastered on the side of the truck was, in giant letters, Jesus loves you. And I'm riding my bike. Why? Why is he telling me this now? I'm on my way to do evil. I don't want to think about God. And God would not be turned away. I went to my next destination, and it finally drove me crazy after half an hour. It's like, I got to go back into, what kind of trucking line has the famous Jesus Loves You trucking trucks, you know? That is not a thing. That can't be. So I rode my bike back. No truck. No truck. Did anyone see a truck that was parked? No, we didn't see a truck. Wow. I remember, to me, one of the pivotal moments for me, the Lord kept hounding me and kept chasing me, and he kept having that look on his face. Every time I dared to look at him, he kept saying, it's like, cut it out. You can't love me now. That doesn't make sense. It's all about karma. I'm doing bad things. It can't work this way. I didn't understand grace. But I remember I had borrowed, I wish Wendy would have been here for this. My little sister, Wendy, brat. Anyway, she had this Uncle Sam. My dad had gotten this Uncle Sam. It was actually a bank for silver dollars, and it was this little plastic thing. And if you put a silver dollar in Uncle Sam's arm, it went and dropped it in his bag and closed back up. It's kind of a subversive anti-government message when you think about it, because he's just going to take all your money, Uncle Sam is. But anyway, so my little sister was like 5 or 6 at the time. She's like, wow. And she would get all excited. My dad's, I got another silver dollar. Oh, what are you doing? What are you doing? And so we put the silver dollar in and click, go down. And it was this symbol of childhood. It was my little sister's, one of her favorite things to do is put the silver dollar in the. Well, my junior year in high school, I needed some money. It wasn't for anything wholesome. And I'm like, no one's going to notice how many silver dollars are in there. I don't think they're going to notice. I'll pay it back. I'll just borrow it for now, and then I'll remember to pay it back and put it in there, and no one will be any the wiser. So I take some silver dollars out of there and use them for unholy purposes, and then I completely forget, because that's what stoners do. And so I've completely forgotten, and about a month later, I'm sitting in the living room watching TV, and my dad says, hey, what? And he's got the Uncle Sam thing. I was supposed to, oh yeah, wow. He's like, we're missing. Apparently he had been keeping track of how many silver dollars. We're missing some silver dollars. Anyone know anything about this? I'm like, busted. There's no way out of this. So I said, oh, wait a second. I remember now, I borrowed some money from that. I was going to pay it, I promise you. Now, I don't know if some of you met my dad. He's a large dude. He worked in the steel mill for 35 years. He got big callous hands. These things fly through the air. I would put him in one of those UFC matches against the karate guys, okay? Because I was just waiting. What? On a hair trigger, too. What? I'm going to so help. So I'm just waiting like, I was going to pay it back. I forgot about it. I don't know. And mysteriously, magically, supernaturally, my dad, instead of blowing up, just looked at me with the kindest look in the world and said, Tim, if you ever need money, just tell me. It's okay. I can loan you money. I'm like, you don't understand what I use that money for. I'm like, okay, Dad, thanks. And that was the end of that. I didn't know what to deal with that. I knew how to deal with anger. I'm expecting anger. Anger makes sense. There's no anger. It's at that moment where God, channeling my dad, just shows complete kindness, soft-spoken, beautiful kindness. And I remember I went into my room and I wept bitterly. I could not get away from God and his continuing reminder, come on, I want to hug you anyway because I love you. That doesn't make any sense. So what I've discovered is the fact that what truly changes people's lives is what's been sitting there in Romans 2. It's his kindness. I've tried different moves. I've tried this move. Son, you had best clean up your behavior. I've tried that one. I don't think that's God's favorite move. I have tried holding up picket signs. I've done that. I've picketed places as a Christian for Christian cause. And I'm not denouncing that. But I don't think that's God's favorite move either. I don't think yelling things across the street at people who are sinners, I don't think that's God's favorite move. I really don't. All the kind of things that we want to use because you need to know how angry God is about that. That one doesn't work as well. I got to tell you, what seems to work is just to say, I know you feel terrible about yourself, and that's why now I show to you God's love. I'm sure you ladies in my wife's workshop, you heard lots of good stories. They heard lots of good stories about her work. She works at, I said this last time, she works with heroin prostitutes. And what we found with them is they're not nice to work with. They don't come in, I'm really in a bad way. I've got this habit of mine. And it's never like that. They're either high, in which case, before they fall asleep, they're very pleasant, or they're just really belligerent. Hey, I got some laundry. When are you going to do my laundry? I mean, just in your face kind of belligerent. We had, did you tell the Sherry story? Okay, I'll condense for it. She'll tell you this story better. But Sherry was one of these ones. I actually met Sherry because I had an art class across the street and Sherry showed up. I was like, yeah, I'll come back later. Just very belligerently like that. So I knew who Sherry was. Sherry was a heroin addict, but Sherry showed up at this place and like, hey, I need my laundry done. Somebody do my laundry. Okay, I'll do your laundry. Well, listen, the coat, make sure you detach the coat when it comes out, the hood off the coat. When you put it in the dryer, don't put the hood in the dryer. It'll mess the fur up. Okay, gotcha, she says to Lisa, and Lisa leaves, and a new shift takes over who knows nothing about the hood instructions. They do the washer, Sherry. What'd you guys do? What are you thinking? I said don't put the coat. We didn't know anything about it. They called, Lisa, did she give you instructions? Oh, yeah, I forgot about that. But this is Sherry just going on and on. Well, you guys owe me money. That thing was $200. Nobody believes this was $200. But she was just being nasty. And they kept trying to be kind to her. And okay, listen, they even offered, if you want, Lisa, I can buy you a new coat. Never mind. And she kept going back and forth whether she wanted it or not. And she showed up one time. Somebody had contributed purses. They were giving out purses. And Sherry shows up. Hey, you're giving out purses. Can I have a purse? Right when Lisa was passing out the last purse. I'm sorry, that was the last one. But Lisa went over to this heroin prostitute and put her hands on her cheeks and says, I love you so much. Do you realize that? I'm sorry you're having a bad row of luck. Not the sort of thing heroin prostitutes are used to being told. So a few months later, did I skip anything major? I am jumping, but. Oh, yeah. So she goes, I know it must be tough for you. And Sherry goes, yeah, what would you know? You live in you and your white picket fence. Like, we live up the hill from you. Oh, never mind. That was funny. But anyway, so they don't hear from Sherry. Sherry, meanwhile, Lisa wakes up one morning. She talked to the director and she says, I'm tired of hearing about Sherry in a coat. I'm tired of her showing up yelling that we owe her something. We did the best we could. We didn't have to do her laundry. She should be set. We're settled with this. That's it. And Lisa was like, I'm done. I'm done with Sherry. And then she woke up one morning and she felt the Lord saying, you need to get her a coat. But we've already decided you need to get her a coat. It was one of those things. And so she called the director, Kelsey, and said, here's the thing. I feel like God's telling us I got some points at Kohl's, and we can get her a coat. And I love what Kelsey said. She goes, well, I don't think she should get a coat, but I'm not going to fight with Jesus. If Jesus is telling you that, fine. So Lisa went to Kohl's, got her that. Then we couldn't find Sherry. We had this nice new coat waiting for her. We couldn't find her for the longest time. Finally, they got her the coat, and Sherry was driving past Weightless Anchor, and Lisa sees her, and she waves, and Sherry says, hey, listen, first of all, I'm clean now. I got off heroin. She says, secondly, guess what? I stole a coat to replace the other one, and I accidentally put the hood in the dryer, so I know how easy that is. Lisa said, well, we've got a coat for you. Now, we didn't see Sherry for a while. They did a thing on Cincinnati News. They were talking about people going downtown for Valentine's Day and ice skating. See, there's this thing up north you can do called ice skating. You actually skate on, okay, never mind. So they were interviewing some of the people, and we're watching the news, and all of a sudden, whoa, here's Sherry, of the healthiest looking Sherry you've ever seen, now has kicked heroin, now is with her boyfriend. She's downtown on Valentine's Day skating, and guess what she was wearing in the news? The coat that only Jesus wanted her to have. And that's amazing. So many stories like that where people who feel like they don't deserve anything are administered, are given a big hug from God, and that is radical. It is revolutionary. It is his kindness that leads us to repentance. A whole lot of stories that I could continue to tell, but I'll close with this one. I heard this from a guy that wanted to remain anonymous, so I'll respect that. But guy said he was 47 years old. He had just lost his job. Just recently, his girlfriend had left him. And here he was, 47 years old, unemployed, doesn't have anything. And he decided life is too painful. I'm going to take my own life. He actually got online and researched it, how to do it. So he decided on this particular day, he went out to his driveway, hooked up a tube from the exhaust into the interior of the car. And he said, there I sat, and here's a combination for you. I was listening to Christian music, I was drinking beer, and I was crying inside of his car while the fumes slowly filled up the interior. And he's just like, just heaving and drinking and listening. And he said, I was prepared to go, but something made me cry out to God one last time. And I said, God, please forgive me. Please help me. Now, meanwhile, walking down the street is a follower of Jesus, a man. This is significant to the story that it's a man. You ladies don't understand how awkward of a situation this is. And he's walking past the guy's house, and he looks over, and there's a man in his driveway. That's odd. In his car, and he sees the exhaust running, and he doesn't know what this tube's all about, but he can see the guy's shoulders, the silhouette from behind going, crying, and he realizes the man's crying. Now, ladies, I'm going to have to tune you in here. This is a different thing in ladies' world than it is in guy world, okay? In lady world, if there's a woman crying, oh, honey, there's like a spidey sense goes off. Ding, ding, ding. There's like a bat signal goes off. There's a woman within 100 yards crying, and all women within 100 yards gather, oh, are you okay? And they start stroking her hair and like touching her, oh, and rubbing her shoulders. I'm so sorry, honey. And there's ladies from everywhere, like a big clump of woman right there, just a big pool of estrogen just swirling around in there. And they're like, oh, honey. That does not go on in guy world, okay? It's completely different. There's like a magnetic attraction when somebody's crying. It's the exact opposite. There's like a magnetic repulsion when there's a guy crying. If you see a guy crying, if you walk in the room, you look over, oh, there's a guy crying. Leave. Just leave. And you warn the others, don't go in there. There's a guy crying. Ooh, okay. Give him his space, You put up orange cones around the guy. You put crime tape around. Do not go in. There's a dude. Someone's crying, Lord, I'm out of here. Don't. The worst thing you could do is be in the same room and embarrass them. Don't do that. So that's the dilemma this guy's in. He's walking past his house, and there's a dude crying. It's like, how do I work this? What do I do? I feel like I should do something. I feel like there should be some brilliant thing that comes to me. Oh, Lord, please give me some brilliant thing to say. And he couldn't think of what to say, but he's like, there's a guy crying. Every instinct in me says, just keep walking. The man wants his privacy. He's crying. But he fights that. And he walks up to the guy and trying to think what to say. At that precise moment, the guy in the car says, God, please help me. And then tap, tap, tap on the window. Whoa. And the guy rolls down the window. Now, what's funny, this guy was trying to think of the perfect thing to say. He never did come up with it. Because here's what he comes up with. You seem so sad. That was it. That's all. I love to tell a story because you don't have to be brilliant, okay? Just say something. He's like, well, yeah, was it the heaving shoulders that gave it away? Is that what it was? So that's all he said, and he walked away thinking, what an idiot I am. I can't believe I said that. But the guy inside the car realized God still loves me. I'm unemployed. My girlfriend doesn't like me anymore. I'm a loser. And at the depth of loserdom, God can arrange for a guy to tap on my window and say something nice. And I realized God still loves me. Shut off the engine, got out of the car. And by the time he told the story, he was back in with Jesus. He was going to church again. He had got a job. His life was back in repair. But he remembers that one moment. What was the amazing move? All those miracles, don't get miracle envy. You know, we hear about Jesus is about to ascend into heaven after doing all these amazing miracles, and even says to the disciples in John 14, as he's about to, the whole thing's about to go down, and he says to his disciples, you'll do greater things. The things you've seen me do, you'll do greater things. Like, how's this greater? You know, if I was a disciple, being as cynical as I am, I'd be like, how's this greater stuff? How can we do greater things than you? It reminds me of my mother telling me the crust was the best part. This lie that mothers say, why don't you eat the crust? The crust is the best part. If it was the best part, I'd have eaten it by now, wouldn't I? Clearly not the best part. This is some kind of mom propaganda that you feed. And that's what it sounded like when Jesus said, no, you'll do, I'm trying to comfort, you guys all look so sad. Listen, you'll do better stuff than me. Yeah, that's the ticket. And I remember reading that passage like, we don't do better stuff. But yeah, we do better stuff. Those miracles, don't be dazzled by those miracles. Don't have your head turned by all that razzle-dazzle special effects stuff. It doesn't work well. All of us now know what God's favorite move is, and all of us can walk out of here with the best move in God's arsenal. Find someone who looks like they've lost their last friend. Find someone who feels like the world. Find someone who's acting rotten and doesn't deserve. Ooh, if you can find one of those. And extend love. But that's not all you extend love to. Extend love to everyone. Not just those people. But you'll find the amazing timing. It is life-changing. God's greatest move. Open arms. If you want to just survive, you can play it safe. But if you want to thrive, you can take God's favorite move and light up the community with it. Let's pray.